Hey guys, Greg here on the Vinyl Rundown. Today we're going to talk about one artist, and this is because this just popped in the mail the other day. The new Stereophile magazine, which I get every month, and there's a great article by extraordinary jazz guitar player named Bill Frisell. This video is going to be entirely about Bill Frisell, somebody whose career I've been following for, I don't know, 30 years. And this article is by the way, Ken McAuliffe, who is a writer, also a drummer, and actually has the best jazz vinyl channel on YouTube. So please check out Ken McAuliffe's channel. Nice article. A couple things. I'm not going to, go out and buy the magazine, read the article yourself, and I'm going to show you a bunch of my Bill Frisell records and tell you about some of the times I've seen him play. But if you don't know anything about him, he is a really unique sounding guitar player. And right off the bat, Ken talks about the three major guitar players in jazz in the last 30 years. John Scofield, Pat Metheny, and Bill Frisell. All tremendous, tremendous guys. But Bill has a sound that is so unique. One of the few musicians where you can listen to a 5-second clip randomly and you'll recognize his tone immediately. He's not into playing a lot of fast runs and complicated scales. It's really about the sound, the tone quality, the attitude, the mood. And Ken addresses that in one of his questions here. Let's see if I can find that question. Of course, I didn't bookmark it very well. That question is coming right up. We'll get to that question later. Anyway, the question talks about space and texture and color. And those are things that you don't really talk about with most guitar players. Those are words more often used to talk about like composers and arrangers, like Ellington or Maurice Ravel. So Bill is working at a higher level of musicianship where he takes into account the whole sort of soundscape. And we're hearing kind of a bootleg record of his that I have from 1997 with Joey Barron. Very mellow, kind of a spacey. This is not necessarily a great first recording to hear of Bill Frisell, but I can get away with playing it because it's not in any kind of copyright database. So, let's see. I guess I can look at his career by record label in one sense. And oh, by the way, I'm sorry to say, I have 5 or 6 LPs of his, but I have 20 or 30 CDs of his. And in the 90s, I worked for Polygram, and he was on ECM, who was distributed by Polygram, so I got zillions of his CDs, many of which are on ECM and Polygram-related labels. One of his very first ones, In Line, from I don't know, long time ago. Early one, In Line. I don't have a lot to say about each of these. I got to run through them quickly. I will stop and mention something about some of the more significant ones. And I should pull out the vinyl too. The Bill Frisell Band with Kermit Driscoll on bass, Joey Barron on drums. What we're hearing now is Joey Barron on drums also. Okay, here's a significant one. Have a Little Faith in Me. That is the famous John Hyatt song. So that's one thing that Ken talks to Bill about in the article, is your approach to playing standard tunes. And a lot of the stuff Bill records is standards, not his own compositions. And what is a standard? I mean, to me, a standard is only a standard when a jazz musician takes a popular song and reinterprets it and turns it into a standard. So you're going to see a lot of that in Bill Frisell's work, is taking popular songs or traditional songs and making them his own, with his own style and color. And maybe they're not, some are standards that everybody else is playing, and some are ones that he just kind of plucked out of thin air, like John Hyatt's Have a Little Faith in Me, which is a fantastic song. How about a Madonna song on here, which is called, what's the Madonna song on here? Live to Tell. Okay, I don't have the Madonna version. I love the Bill Frisell version. And then there's Billy the Kid by Aaron Copland, and a Charles Ives tune, and really eclectic mix of stuff. So this is one of the better records. Let's see, what else do we have? Where in the World on ECM. That's with Joey Barron, same group as before. I got a million of these. I got to go through them quickly. The Willies. I think this is more country folky style, which I'll get into more. Kermit Driscoll and Joey Barron live. And this has the Have a Little Faith and a bunch of tunes. Probably live in New York, I guess. ECM Works, kind of like a greatest hits. But he's already doing a greatest hits in 1988. He'd only been around for less than 10 years. Let's see. Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair with Mark Johnson. Beautiful traditional tune. Okay, that's kind of some of the ECM stuff. Then another band that I have a million records on of him. So let me change the subject. Why not? I have a ton of his records, and there's no way you could really collect them all. I mean, he's got so many, but he also does a ton of work as a sideman. Where's the Sideman records? Of course, I can't find them here. Don't move. Yeah, there's just too many records. One of Blue Note's biggest selling records of all time, Norah Jones, Come Away With Me, won multiple Grammys. Bill Frisell, as a sideman on here, is a major contribution to the sound of this record, and he's played on a handful of her records. But he does sideman work with a lot of people. Fred Hirsch, the piano player from New York, I guess from New York. Just the two of them, duets, a lot of ballads, such as Someday My Prince Will Come, which might be the song we're hearing in the background here. Might As Well Be Spring, My One and Only Love. Very nice but quiet record. Okay, I'm going to skip some of the CDs and go to the vinyl. This is one of my favorite and very little known records called Power Tools. That's the group, but they only made one record. Strange Meeting with Ronald Shannon Jackson on drums and Melvin Gibbs on bass. And this is a very fusion-y, more raw, more avant-garde record. Some of it is mellow, but a lot of it is noisy and approaches free jazz. This record is recorded live in one take, no editing or overdubs. And again, Bill likes to take standard tunes and re-record them. Unchained Melody by Righteous Brothers. Beautiful version of that on here. Starts really mellow. Gets more and more intense as it goes on. One of my favorites. And I'm just going to go through some of the vinyl here. Sideman on the Lyle Mays album. What year is that? I don't know. This is on Geffen. Lyle Mays from the Pat Metheny Group. This is called, it's called Lyle Mays. Good title. Sideman on this record, Lucinda Williams. And by the way, he's doing a lot of stuff with Lucinda Williams lately. And actually I saw him play with her and Charles Lloyd a couple years ago at UCLA. So long-standing collaborations with alt, rootsy, country singer Lucinda Williams. And a lot of stuff with Charles Lloyd. And unfortunately I don't have a lot of his newest stuff. Charles Lloyd stuff especially. There's a collaboration I mentioned before. Mark Johnson, the great bass player who played with Bill Evans' later group, and John Scofield, Peter Erskine from Weather Report. Really nice fusion-y record on loud. Okay, let's turn it down a little bit. Joey Barron on drums in the background. What tunes are on here? Resolution by John Coltrane, beautiful bass solo by Mark Johnson, and A Wishing Doll by Elmer Bernstein. Just really eclectic mix of tunes. And maybe you're hearing a little bit of what his guitar sounds like. There's a lot of chords and accompaniment, and then he'll do solos and leads, and he'll do distorted sound and non-distorted sound. This record is not necessarily the best way to learn about Bill Frisell. Okay, what else? Alright, and one of the more recent vinyl purchases I got. He's on the Nonesuch label, or has been for the last few years. Good Dog, Happy Man. There's Bill way off in the corner there. There's the man. There's the dog. And this is kind of part of his country rootsy period, which he did for at least 10 years. So, Greg Lees on pedal steel guitar. And are you listening? Are you listening, Mazzy? Reich Hooter's on here on Shenandoah, which is a wonderful, wonderful take on a traditional country folky song, Shenandoah. And let's see. Double record set on Nonesuch, came out a couple years ago. A lot of his stuff is hard to find on vinyl because he was very active during the 90s, the CD era. Okay, I got much more stuff to show you, so I'm going to try to go fast. So after ECM, he was on the Nonesuch label for quite a bit. Got a lot of those records. Bill Frisell with Ron Carter and Paul Motian. And nice record. Bill Frisell with Dave Holland on bass and Elvin Jones. What is this called? That's what it's called on Nonesuch Records. Going quickly, making a mess of this room. Gone Just Like a Train, another one of the sort of country rootsy records with Victor Krause on bass, Jim Keltner on drums, and all these Nonesuch ones have these cardboard sleeve, which I usually leave them in. Unspeakable with, check it out, who's on here? Hal Wilner. I meant to mention Hal Wilner because Bill Frisell plays on a lot of the Hal Wilner tribute projects, like the Charles Mingus one. Hal Wilner plays turntable samples. Anyway, Unspeakable. Okay, that's kind of a lot of the stuff from the Nonesuch period. Did I mention Paul Motian already? I'm not sure I did. So, Paul Motian, the great drummer who was in the original Bill Evans trio in the 50s. Paul Motian has a brilliant band, or had a brilliant band. Mostly trio, but not always trio. This is one of their very first ones with Joe Lovano, called One Time Out, and this is on a very small label called Soul Note, and I can't tell what songs are on there. Here's a beautiful one. Bill Frisell, Joe Lovano, Paul Motian in Tokyo on the JMT label. JMT was a German jazz label from about 85 to 95. Paul Motian, most of his stuff was on that label, and they kind of went defunct, I guess, after a while. But, okay, this has Kathleen Gray, the Ornette Coleman tune, which is great. And what else is on here? Good record, live in Tokyo. Great artwork on these JMT releases. Here's another JMT. This is a great one. This is all Bill Evans tunes with Joe Lovano and Mark Johnson. So actually you had Mark Johnson, who played bass with Bill Evans later in his career, Paul Motian, who played drums with Bill Evans early in his career, Joe Lovano. Love this record. It's got some Bill Evans tunes that you don't hear that often, like Very Early and Time Remembered and Show Type tune on the JMT label. This is one of the best looking covers on the JMT label, and this is actually one of my favorites also. This is called Monk in Motion. Just the Thelonious Monk tunes done by Bill Frisell and Paul Motian trio. One of my favorites. God, there's so many freaking records here. It's going to take all day. Paul Motian on Broadway. Somewhere Over the Rainbow. All those kind of tunes from Broadway show tunes, Bill Frisell. So when Bill Frisell is the sideman on a record, it gives it a whole different feel. It gives it a whole different sound. Kind of hard to explain. He's not just playing guitar solos. He's the major chording instrument plus solos. Okay, another Paul Motian trio called Trio-ism. Dewey Redman and Joe Lovano. What tunes are on here? I don't know, bunch of tunes. Another Paul Motian on Broadway, Volume 3. 3 volumes. I think I only showed you 2. Lee Konitz on saxophone. Charlie Hayden on bass. Bunch of great standard tunes. And after the JMT label kind of went away, Paul Motian came back later on in his career and went directly with ECM. And look at the difference in artwork, the dark, moody photography of ECM. So Bill Frisell, Paul Motian, Joe Lovano. And Paul Motian died, I don't know how many years ago, but he was making great records into his 80s, I guess. Okay, what else is there to show you here? That's kind of almost, that's kind of almost everything I was going to show you. I was going to tell you that I've seen him play 5 or 6 times, at least 3 times in really tiny, intimate venues where I was really close, like first or second row, 10, 15 feet away from him. McCabe's Guitar Store in Santa Monica, beautiful place to see, especially guitar-oriented groups. Saw him twice at the Skirball Center in Los Angeles. Small rooms. That brings me to what I meant to mention before. A lot of the stuff he does is very sort of artsy and artistic and deals with visual arts. So he's often composing pieces to accompany some kind of a visual show. So he composed an entire soundtrack to the Buster Keaton movie, The General. And he would perform it live with the silent movie playing in the background. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see that, but I've seen other projects of that ilk. He did a project with featuring the photography of this very eccentric photographer, portrait photographer from the Depression era called Dis Farmer. The guy actually changed his name to Dis Farmer because he didn't want to associate with the simple farm folk that he was sort of living amongst, but he took their pictures anyway. When they discovered those pictures, the art community kind of took notice of it. So Frisell composed a whole suite of music to accompany those photographs. So I saw that performed in at the Skirball Center in Los Angeles. The reason I mention that is because that's the only time I actually got to meet Bill. After the show, he just came out and shook some hands. And I should have mentioned, he's one of the he seems very shy, soft-spoken, humble. Hats off to Ken McAuliffe, who got Bill to speak all these words, because he's not known as a man of many words. You know, very humble. So what do you say when you meet, one of your idols? You just walk up and say, hey Bill, great to meet you, good set, whatever. That's usually enough. I don't want to bother these people. But the guy I was with went up to him and had to ask a hard-hitting question. He's like, Bill, that amplifier, was that a 12-inch or a 15-inch speaker? And I'm like, that's the question you ask Bill Frisell? Whatever. Doesn't matter. It's his question. He can ask whatever he wants, but I thought that was hilarious. I don't remember the answer. I don't really care what size amplifier or what kind of guitar picks you use, because that's not where Bill gets his sound at all. His sound is in his fingers and in his soul. So I think that concludes a very long video on brilliant guitar player Bill Frisell. Pick it up in the new stereo file, and you might want to pick up the $39,000 CD player. Good review of that too. Fantastic guitar player. Please give a listen. I will link some of the things down below here so you can listen. He's got a lot of good live stuff on YouTube. And that's about it, guys. So thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing. Congrats to Ken for doing the great interview, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.